Welcome to Behind the Doors, the podcast where we take you behind the scenes of residential real estate investing. I'm your host, Dan Noma Jr., here with my co-host, Marvin Cruz.
We're here to help you unlock the best strategies and practice for investors. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro looking to scale your portfolio.
We've spent decades navigating the ever-changing world of real estate, and now we're sharing everything we've learned to help you succeed.
From off-market deals to cash flow management and everything in between, we'll break it down and bring you actionable insights that can make a real difference in your investments.
So get ready to open the door to new opportunities and take your real estate investing to the next level. Let's dive in. All right, we're back at Behind the Doors podcast. Without Marvin today. So no Marvin today. Marvin is battling the norovirus this week. So man, he's down for the count. But I was hoping he was here to meet you to talk about a pretty important topic for a lot of our listeners for sure. Because most of our listeners are investors or agents that are working with investors. Property management. So I've got somebody that I think is probably the foremost expert in property management. We've known each other for, I don't know how long, a long time.
At least 10 years.
10 years or so. And Donovan Reese with My Rent Door. Donovan, has a long history in property management. So maybe, dude, to kick us off, why don't you tell our crew a little bit about your story in property management? Because I think they're gonna know the company you came from. They're gonna know where.
Are we not gonna say the name?
It's up to you. You can do whatever you want. This is a free, it's a free podcast. So whatever works for you.
All right. Well, not appreciate you saying that about me. We'll talk about my two favorite subjects, myself and property management.
Yeah.
So,
do you know anything else?
Not much.
Not much else. Yeah.
That's why when I left the first company, I said I'd never do it again, and here I am because it's about my only skill I have.
That's it.
No, so I got involved, we'll say the name, Renter's Warehouse. My partner, Kevin Ortner, still the CEO there, great dude. Got involved with the founder right as it was getting started in 2008, 2009,
yep.
And started an office here. And so I kind of ran that one. And then Kevin moved back to Minnesota shortly after we started it, and I ended up kind of running the whole thing. And so, yeah, we grew that one, starting in, 2009, and it was a interesting time to be leasing properties. I spent a lot of time in Santan Valley and renting houses for $600 a month and now go for $3,000 a month. So it's crazy to see. But yes, we originally built that model to to service the unintentional or accidental landlord, because not that we were the first property management company around, but kind of targeted that and captured that audience of, because I say before us, in that time, if you were moving, you had two options. It was short sale or foreclose, pretty much, right? And so we were here as a solution for those unintentional landlords. So that's really how we built that business up. And then we did acquire a couple more markets. So we also owned Colorado market, and we were in Tucson, and then Rochester, Minnesota.
Yep.
So I had another partner, John Ortner, one of my favorite people of all time. On that one as well, we sold to a private equity fund in 2016, sold the majority equity stake, and I stayed on as the market president and ran the leasing in all of the markets. So we had about 250 leasing agents and I think about 40 markets. I think we did probably close to 1,000 leases a month.
Yeah.
And so I stayed on for about a
big time property management.
Yeah, we did a lot. We moved a lot of properties.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I stayed on till May of 2017 then, and just didn't agree with the direction that it was going. And so we got divorced, and as I said, I'd never do it again. And here I am doing it again. Back
at it again. You're a glutton for punishment, I suppose.
I absolutely am.
Yeah, property management has always been for me. I had a small property management company, nowhere near the scale you guys were doing. And really, I started it out of default. I was referring my customers to property managers, and then they would have a terrible experience. And then my customer would come back to me and tell me how bad their experience was. But I also realized that when they did that, they also didn't buy any more properties from me. So as a broker and a guy who makes money selling real estate, I had to build my own property management company just to service that customer. And I think that's where we should start, is really on service. And what, if you're a real estate investor, whether you got the property, acquired it, to your point, as like default landlord. And that's for those of you who don't understand, that would be like you inherited the property, or, you bought another home and couldn't sell your existing home. Something like that would make you a default landlord. Maybe you didn't want to be a landlord, you just became one. Or you were, a landlord, and you actually pursued real estate investment, you became a landlord. I think there's a big question mark over how to select a property manager. And how do you pick the right property manager?
Call my renter.
Well, I mean, obviously that's the solution that you're building, right? Is the ultimate property management company, right? Based on all that experience. But to you, what do you think out there? What are the problems you're trying to solve for as a property manager on behalf of the landlords that you work for?
Yeah. So maybe if I kind of tell the story of how I got here from there, it might help. At the previous company, we really didn't put a lot of value in our renters. I used to joke they're a dime a dozen, but they're actually cheaper than that. Yeah. And I've realized I couldn't have been more wrong in that. So after I left there, I had a 5-year non-compete, and so I started flipping turnkey rental properties. So I'd buy them, fix them up, put a renter in place, and sell them. And the very first one I did was on Osborne. Great house, got great rents out of it, great renters, and I just could not sell this house. It was on the MLS, and then I'd get a wholesaler calling me saying they had a buyer, but I had to take it offline. And so I did that from January till November. Yeah. And I was cash flowing at a couple $100 on hard money. It was that good. Yeah. And I just couldn't get it sold. So it came off, and I put it back on the market. And I didn't even talk about the cash flow. I didn't talk about any of that. I just said, I have really good renters. They know I'm selling the house. I don't need 48 hours notice. You can meet the renters. Yeah. Come by and no joke, I had a full price offer in 24 hours and 6 backup offers, and sold it in 30 days. Oh. And what I realized through that experience was, really what's valuable is good renters. Yeah. Right. We're all so scared of the one thing that we should love the most, right? Good renters make for good investments. Yeah. So now I say they're not a dime a dozen, they're worth their weight in gold. And so I've really changed my perspective on that considerably, where, I put a lot of effort and emphasis into creating, good relationships, working relationships with my renters. I call them renter partners. Yep. And so beginning in COVID and through that, I was doing some consulting on employee engagement in the workplace. And I was building it off a structure of emotional intelligence. I'm a big fan of it, still learning that one, but yeah. I started doing a lot of research too and talking to companies, and you see there's a lot of surveys and studies out there talking about, it's one of the studies was like 80% of all employees have either left a job or are considering leaving a job, not due to a bad company, but a bad manager. Yeah. And so I started thinking about it, going, how many renters leave the property they're renting, not because the home no longer suits their needs, but because the relationship with their landlord or management company has become untenable. I've
never thought of that. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure that people leave I could definitely see that, where you're renting a property and your experience with the property manager is just so bad. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's like, I love this house, I love the location. My kids are in school in this neighborhood, but I got to get away from this property manager because they won't fix anything. They don't take my calls. They don't value my time. Like they got me on hold half the time or calling some like call center overseas to do all of my maintenance requests. So I could totally see that. Yeah.
And I see a lot of issues with self-managed landlords and that too. A lot of them just don't understand the rules or how things work. And so I get a lot of, tenants calling me going, hey, my landlord's trying to take advantage of me. How do I, and so I do a lot of just helping because, one of our core values is, we win together and we really want to see everyone win. So through this here, we really tried to, level the playing field for all parties. So, I realized that, you really need good renters and you need to keep the property filled. You know, like 10 years ago or less, you didn't really care if a renter left because it was easy to get another one. Obviously it's a little bit more challenging today, but we should have been more conscientious of that in the past too, because we have a mission of zero vacancy at my rent door because vacancy is the single biggest killer of profitability. And even in a good market, you lose a renter, you're probably 1 month of lost rent at a minimum. Typically, you've got turnover costs, leasing costs. And so it does cost you a lot of money. I mean, you lose 1 month, that's, 8% right there. Right. So it's important to keep good renters. Yeah. And so we really go out of our way to help them and also balance, the needs of our investors as well. But, being able to keep tenants happy. And again, it's when you start out, with that relationship, and we have a series of upfront conversations that we have, we call them upfront contracts, about how we're going to work together. Yeah. This is what we expect from you. This is what you can expect from us. This is what's going to happen if we get off track, and we can always then reference that back in other times. But from the very get-go, we tell them how much we appreciate them, and so we don't charge them any fees at all. No admin fee, no resident benefit packages, nothing. Although we've got some stuff coming on right now that might change that a little bit, but that's purely a pass-through cost. And so we really help them out. And so one of the things that everyone complains about is maintenance. We were just talking about that before we got on here. Yeah. And everyone's like, oh, maintenance is tough, and the renter is a pain, and they won't let you in. And I'm like, yeah, that's because you've been a jerk to them the whole time, right? Because you can be, and now they need something, and they're demanding, and now you have this. You go into this interaction here very adversarial, where it shouldn't be, right? It's really a successful maintenance request is not just getting the maintenance done. It's actually. We have a 3-step process. We listen, we empathize, and we solve together. So we make our renters part of the solution. And we also appreciate when they do reach out to us for maintenance. Obviously, nobody wants maintenance issues on their house. But, if it's a legitimate maintenance issue, like you want to know about it. You want to get it fixed so that you can, protect your asset. And that's, ultimately what it is. So we don't beat them up for calling us. We appreciate it. We thank them for that. And then we're on top of it, and we don't mark up maintenance either. So if it needs to get done, it needs to get done, and we're not trying to interject ourselves in the middle of that either. So it's really just every interaction of with your renter, and whether that's late rent. I used to call and scream at renters when they were late, and it's not effective. And so now we have a very proactive approach to that, and we've partnered with a lot of nonprofits and charities and government organizations. So if our renters run into a challenge, what does they say? The average American has like $400 in their saving or emergency fund or something. So it's something that comes up a lot. And if you've got a great renter and they've been good and they've been paying and they run into an issue, help them out. I'm not going to wait until they don't pay and then issue the 5-day and go through that. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the investor, and it's our job to collect rent. So we also don't keep late fees either on that. So any late fees that are collected go directly to our clients.
I've always found that late fee, penalty for the tenant was always like counterproductive, right? Because it's like if you hammer them on late fees, they're going to be likely to be late again, right? Because they're living like typically paycheck to paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
And, if they scrape it together to get their rent and they've now got it, and then you've got like this, monstrous late fee on top of that. And again, right, like now they're like another month behind potentially because they didn't have that extra money in savings, right? And you're putting them in a financial bind that doesn't serve you either as the landlord. And I think that gets lost, like in the world of real estate. Everybody's like, they want to take out, if somebody's late, they're like, oh, I get to charge my, here's my 5-day notice plus here's your fine. But there's like no value to that, to your point. I don't think.
No, I agree. And
you can't do it for free, right? But like, it just seems a little counterproductive, I guess, what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, and that, just on a broader thing on that is something you see that I saw in this space when I came back into it. Initially, I just rolled out the model that I knew, and I was doing it for a little while ago, and this is uninspiring.
Yeah.
And what I found was the way that most management companies are constructed is to be at odds with both their clients and their renters. Right? You're not your missions are not aligned.
Yeah.
And so, right, as a landlord, you want your money on time. As a property, and I see a lot of property management companies that make a lot of money on late fees.
Yeah.
And it's a major line item in their P&Ls.
Yeah.
And so,
right.
And you see that a lot with low cost management companies. If they're managing for $50 a month, they're making money every time they turn around because they have to. And so, we really looked at this and said, how can we align ourselves with our investors, with our renters? And so I spent, quite a bit of time just, deconstructing every single issue that a renter could have and a landlord and a property manager and your vendors, and started solving them all individually, and then said, how can I put this together where, everyone wins together as much as you can? Some of them are just challenging situations, and then said, okay, I think I've developed a system here where, based on, that's a whole other story, based on kindness, empathy, and emotional intelligence, and then put together a pricing structure that could solve for that. So, we say we don't want to profit off your worst days. Right? Yeah. And worst days, as a landlord, are vacancy and maintenance. So we don't upcharge our maintenance. We don't charge a leasing fee. And we don't keep late fees. So I always tell my renters right up front, hey, we're here to help you. We're here to support you. If you need anything, we're absolutely a resource for you. If you call us ahead of time and let us know you're having problems, we're going to work with you. If I have to find you, it's not going to go as well. So we really encourage them to be upfront with that. And, a lot of times too, we'll waive late fees, in order to get, if they're communicating with us and, they're trying and, scraping it together, like it's in nobody's best interest to continue to put your hand in their pocket when the pockets are already inside out.
Right. Yeah, they're not gonna. That doesn't win. So I'm a landlord, and I'm thinking about a new property management company, or maybe I'm self-managing and I'm getting into property management. What it sounds like, what I'm hearing you say is, it starts with a property manager that understands probably the biggest pinch point, which is vacancy or loss, right? And the idea of losing that tenant is probably something that you guys value. But as a new or a landlord that's transitioning with a property manager, that's something to consider, right? It's not just the fee, right? And I think that's it's almost like the real estate business. I often joke with agents that when I see these discount fee models, right? Like I'll list your house for a penny, fee, whatever. Like when I see those models, it makes me question, would you ever go to Las Vegas and eat at the cheapest buffet?
Only after a long night.
It's no, I want to eat, and this is important. It's the biggest sale or acquisition of my life financially. And a discount to that isn't really what I want to hear. Now that's me, right? There are people I'm sure that are shopping coupon clippers, right? That are looking at it from strictly just the economics portion of it. But having now been in it for so long and understanding that this is an industry where you get what you pay for in a big way. And I think property management can be similar to that. You know, I mean, I think there's probably a top end, right? And then there's probably something in between, or, you know, and then obviously what you guys are doing with tech and efficiencies around that and just passing that along to your customer seems the right way to go to me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, there's a lot of different pricing models out there, but there's primarily two, right? There's a flat fee management, and then there's a percentage.
Right.
Both of those typically have a lot of other fees tied to them. So, you know, you look at someone who's going, hey, you know, these guys will do it for 6%. I'm like, what's the leasing fee? You know, 1 month's rent. Okay, well, that's 8% of your income that year. You know, what are they, you know, and they interject themselves into the process to with their hand out in so many different ways, and it's counterproductive. You know, it's the one thing here. Here's a great example. You know, you look at a lot of the flat fee models. You know, they're charging $60 a month or whatever it is. Like, I can tell you, you can't run a profitable property management company at $60 a month.
Right.
Like, it's not possible.
Right.
Now they have other fees, right? Leasing fees and whatnot too. But what you see, and you have seen some pushback on that, and there was a big lawsuit around it. But the resident fees that get charged is out of control.
Yeah.
Right. And this is no joke. I moved a couple into a house in Glendale probably 6 months ago. And they showed me their other lease they had with a property management company in town. Their lease was $1,900 a month, and they paid $2,650 a month total.
Wow. Just an additional cost and fees.
Yeah.
So like a cleaning fee, pet fee.
I mean, monthly.
Yeah.
I mean, and so that's gotten out of control. And so what people don't realize, and I talk to other property managers all the time, and it's, the conversation's going two parts of the mouth going, hey, I'm able to figure out all of these extra revenue streams. And that sounds great. I'm not opposed to money and revenue.
Yeah.
And so they're adding on, these, resident benefit packages and these different things. And I won't get on that soapbox at the moment, but, they're not selling them because it's a benefit to the resident. They're selling it because they can tack on money and make an extra $8 or whatever a month. And so, I'm like, I was asking them, like, hey, do your owners know you charge these fees? And mostly they say no. And they're like, well, it doesn't matter because the owner's not paying it anyways. But, and especially right now, I mean, Zillow came out with their, state of the rental market report here recently, and the single biggest concern of renters is affordability right, this year, right? And so when you tack on all these egregious fees, then it limits, what you can get in rent, right? And so it is actually hurting the landlords a lot more than they realize, right? So we do a lot with a lot of funds and build to rent stuff, and everyone's always, refinancing from, one to the other. And, it's important to keep rents as high as you can and to keep them as occupied as you can in order to get, refied out of, whatever you're at. And if you've got a portfolio and it's, renting for $1,900, what you're seeing, but, it's really $2,500, $2,600,
right?
And that house wasn't worth that anyways. But that's money that should be going to the landlord.
Right.
And it's not just about having the money in your pocket. It's, it's an investment, right? It's a tool. And if you can't fully utilize the tool and leverage it because you have somebody who's supposed to be out looking for your best interest in the middle of this and suppressing your rents, there again, we're at odds of what we should be doing and looking out for the best interest of our investors. Yeah.
So really, if I'm that investor and I'm gonna hire a property manager, it sounds like what you're suggesting is really it's about, what are the all-in costs that this property manager is going to not only charge me, but what are they going to charge my tenant potentially, and try to pass through. Because those like, you could, like, to your point, you could be a $50 a month, property manager and in the eyes of a landlord, but on the other side, your tenant is the one that's suffering because they're that $2,600 example. They're going from $1,900 to $2,600 due to all these additional fees.
Obviously that's a very egregious one. That's
Yeah.
that's not typical, but
Right.
yeah, I mean, it's probably 150 is not unreasonable.
Right. So, the property manager's taking those additional fees. So, I would say, landlord beware, right? It's like, the world of property management, there are so many different unique models of pricing. And, you've got to make sure that if you're going to select a property manager, that it's not just about the fees that you're charging or you're getting charged. It's the fees that your tenant's going to pay too, that are going to potentially affect the performance of your investment. So it's important to look just beyond the flat fee. And, you guys with Renters Warehouse built a pretty cool business advertising the fee, right? I mean, it was like on the radio,
Like
television.
a $5 foot line.
Yeah. I mean, it was like common knowledge. Everybody knew what you guys charged because it was everywhere, and, I think that was a big thing, but it's interesting to hear that like your perspective has changed and now it's about the tenant and keeping the tenant, because I know like institutionally, a lot of our clients, they very much are focused on the tenant experience. Whereas 10 years ago, that was not part of the conversation, right?
Right.
Nobody really valued the tenant experience so much, right? What we were talking about was what does it rent for? That was kind of where it stopped.
Right.
Now we're even keeping metrics and KPIs around how long beyond the first phase of the lease, so beyond the first year, were we able to keep that tenant? Could we keep them for 2 or 3 years? And if we could, like, that becomes super valuable in whether you're a gigantic investor or a small investor, just the idea of like not having to turn the property
Right.
saves a ton of money, a ton.
Oh, absolutely.
And, that I think it's absolutely critical that, landlords understand that like, that's really the game, right? Even if you're getting a tenant that pays a little bit less or a property manager that charges a little bit more, but can keep the tenant in there longer because they're satisfying the needs of the tenant, that eventually, like apples to apples, you're going to make more money in the long run doing it that way.
That's what I'm betting on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like when you look at it, like, the other thing is, you have a renter in there and they've been a great renter for a year or two, right? You have a known commodity. You know how they're going to act, unless, things get really sideways. But, so you can then kick out a perfectly good renter over $50 a month and then take a chance on an unknown commodity. And you don't know that new renter coming in, they might just be an absolute nightmare, right? Yep. And so the risk on that, I don't, to me, it's not worth it when you have really good renters, within reason, do everything you can to keep them. Because again, you don't have the turn costs, you don't have the vacancies, and you look at it like, I mean, so again, we don't charge any leasing fees because we only charge rent when we charge a management fee when rent's collected, and that's it. We don't charge any other fees at all.
Yeah.
But if you look at it, and I'll pick on the model here. You look at a company, let's just say they charge a flat $100 a month to manage, and they charge 1 month's rent to place a tenant. Maybe that model exists.
Yeah.
So let's say your average rent is $2,000 here in Phoenix, right? So they're making $100, or they can, if that tenant turns and they put a new tenant in there, they get $2,000.
Yeah.
Right. So it's going to take them 20 months to make what they can make in 1 month.
Right.
So in a lot of these, it's, again, you're misaligned with the best interest of your investors.
Right. Man, we've got a lot to talk about. Property management is there's a lot here for sure. So I appreciate you being on our podcast. We're not going to let you go right away though. We'll have you back for the next episode. But I think, to wrap this one up, summarize, if I'm hearing you correctly, I think what the solution is in selecting the right property manager is that it goes well beyond just the fee. And it really goes on to how is this property manager going to treat your tenants? What are the fees that they're going to charge the tenants? And what does that mean like to me? And if they're going to charge like this leasing fee or whatever that you said, lease up fee, like is there incentives aligned with mine? And if my goal as a landlord is really to earn the most money or squeeze the most money out of this investment, then I got to be really careful in selecting the right property manager that's going to have my best interest in mind. And that's my long-term interest, especially if I'm a long-term landlord positioning myself to buy a property and keep it long-term. Look, I mean, I'm playing the long game, right? So the longer I can keep that tenant in there, the more money I can make. I need a property manager that wants to play that game with me. That's the most critical thing.
Absolutely. I say I'm more of a relationship manager than a property manager. If you can manage the relationship correctly, managing the property is pretty easy, especially if you set it up correctly to begin with. But it really is. It's about people.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Doors. We hope you found today's insights valuable for your real estate investing journey.
Remember, real estate success doesn't happen overnight, but with the right tools and strategies, you can build long-term wealth and create passive income.
If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with others who are passionate about real estate investing.
Don't forget to follow us on social media for more tips and exclusive content.
Until next time, keep unlocking new opportunities, and we'll see you on the next episode of Behind the Doors.